Hey everybody, fun episode today with Juan Michelle Martin from JMM Health Solutions. We're talking about telehealth, how to get the business started, how to get those patients in, right? How to convince ourselves that it's helpful, how to convince patients that it's helpful, and stick around at the end because Juan Michelle drops just an amazing knowledge bomb which just blew my mind out of the water. So, really excited to bring this to you. Enjoy. Hi, welcome to the Women's Health Podcast. I'm Anthony Lowe, the physio detective.
And I'm Marika Hart from Herasphere. Together we interview leading authorities, we answer questions and share our thoughts to provide the general public with the best quality information that we can find on all aspects of women's health. Please remember that the materials and the content on this podcast are intended as general information and they're for entertainment purposes only.
They're not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Now sit back, grab your favourite beverage, or do your thing and enjoy the show. Apparently, we are live on Facebook. Welcome, everybody, to the podcast. I'm Anthony Lowe, one of your hosts. My other host is Marika Hart. Welcome back, Marika. How are you feeling?
Good morning. I am. I feel like every time we do a podcast, I look at my eyes and think, "Oh my God, I'm so tired."
Well, it is the morning.
I have had my first sip of coffee today. So yes, not quite waking up yet. It's not even that early. It's like 8 o'clock. I should be more alert, switched on.
No, you shouldn't.
Thanks, Joanne.
And we've got Juan.
Hello.
Isn't that a funny thing? Like lots of people do lots of things with your names. I would love to hear some of the stories, but your name is Juan, right?
Mm-hmm. It's Juan Michelle. Yes. Put a hyphen between the U and the A.
Cool. And is it Juan Michelle as in that's what you prefer to be called?
No, that's what it is. But everybody calls me J. Yeah, but it's fine.
Okay, but your name is Juan Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well then you get called Juan Michelle from now on because somehow I missed that. I remember you in New York. You just had a J. That is it.
I just had the J. You were like, "Is that it?"
That's why I was right.
Like, is that it?
Is that it, Jay? You said you can just call me Jay, but you didn't tell. I don't remember being told that it's Juan Michelle. Like, okay, then Juan Michelle it is.
Yeah. I made that little legal change, because every time I would go into, it was funny, interviews were quite interesting. You'd go into an interview and lucky for me, I can speak Spanish, but I would get there and I would always get these looks. I'm like, oh, you were expecting that Hispanic guy. Oh, yeah, he's not coming today. I'm Juan, though. Nice to meet you. And I would just,
But where is Juan? Where's Juan?
Right? They're like, oh. Or sometimes, even if you correct people, I'd never forget one day I was on the phone with someone calling. I think I was calling about like my internet or my phone or something and speaking to the lady. And she's like, "Yes, Mr. Martin." I'm like, "No, it's actually Mrs. And my name is Juan." "Okay, Juan." And I'm like, "Juan." And she keeps going and I keep saying it and she's like, "Okay." And I'm like, "Lady, are you even listening to me?" Clearly not.
No.
Clearly not.
Not listening to you.
Anthony has no idea what you're talking about.
That's right. That's right, Maria. I don't. Oh, excellent.
Fun times.
And tell us a little bit about yourself, Juan, because it'd be lovely for anyone who doesn't know of you yet, and they're going to know about you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and about your journey.
All right. Well, first of all, like you guys, I am from a beautiful British colony. Whoop, whoop. So I get netball. So you guys are my people.
Yeah.
These Americans just don't understand.
Juan Michelle and I were talking about netball and I'm like, oh, I love netball.
And everybody else is looking at us like, what?
What position do you play, Juan?
I was wing defense and goal defense.
Oh, nice.
Mid
got good elbows?
Well, yeah, I also would knee people and, maybe a little slide tackle, throw a leg out, make them fall,
Foot between the
But it's
leg
a
type stuff.
non-contact sport.
It it
Totally a
it
non-contact
it
sport.
is, but you got to be able to body people just right. Just right.
Yeah.
Toe the line.
It's not so much that you shoved her, she ran into
It
you,
was, yeah, it
right?
was a simultaneous contact. Isn't that what it always is?
Absolutely. Come on, ref.
I mean, like, but did you not see her come into me? She just happened to hit my elbow. What are you
That's
talking
it.
about?
Like it was an
Yeah,
attack on. She tried to headbutt your elbow. Did you not see that, ref? Like,
basically, basically. Yeah, I view netball as totally a contact sport. But yeah, I started playing when I was 7. So I grew up in Barbados. Um, I started playing netball at like 7. It was fun. All through primary and secondary school. But then I moved to the beautiful United States, went to college, went to PT school. I lived in New York. That's where my family is. And then moved on to Atlanta about 10 years ago. So I've worked in a variety of settings, primarily outpatient ortho and some acute care, hospital based, and did a number of things, ortho, peds, and some pelvic health. And more recently, in the last 2 years, I started my own practice, which is adult and pediatric pelvic health. So that's been fun.
awesome. Um, you know, being from another country and then acclimatizing. When did you move to the US?
When I was like 18, just around when I turned 18, so right after I graduated secondary school.
Wow. So that would have been a change too, because like,
Hmm.
Commonwealth countries and then the US,
And
that
then
would
the
have been
U.S.
really fun.
The good thing is, like, since a lot of my family was in New York, we spent summers there. So I had a lot of exposure and experience. But I actually went to undergrad in Alabama. Talk about culture shock. Yeah,
Wow.
definitely not New York City. Definitely not. So it was interesting, to say the least.
Yes.
Yeah,
Barbados. Yeah.
yeah, from
I'd love
Barbados.
to go to Barbados.
I'd like to be quarantined there on a beach. That'd be great.
Yeah, I can think of worse places to be. So,
Hmm.
so currently, do you have people working for you, or is it you have your own clinic and
No, I have my own clinic. I'm a solo practitioner. So I do a mix of, and I actually just started being based in the clinic in the fall, in October. I was doing more home based visits and telehealth. That's what I was doing for my clients. They loved it. It was fun. It was easy. I could set my own schedule. I've got 2 little kids. My youngest is currently 4. So 2 years ago, when I decided to do this, um, they were 4 and 2 when I started my business. And so they were still both in that preschool. And, of course, they would always do things at like 10 and 11 o'clock in the morning. And, you never found out that something was happening until the week of. So it's not like you had much planning time. But it was great to have that flexibility because I could schedule a patient at 8 or 9 and then go to their school for whatever they had. And then, go to my patients or do a virtual session. So it was really, for me, it was a necessity at the time. Anthony, you're muted. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. So, the flexibility is really, really cool. Um, how how does your how do your consults work? How does it look? Because just in the last week, there's been a whole bunch of how to do telehealth,
Hmm.
setting it up, and we can talk about some of that. If you're listening live on Facebook Live, drop your comments, drop your questions, and we'll make sure that Joanne Michelle gets it, and she's able to respond to those, or afterwards, if you're listening on replay, this will be available on the page. Um, but what does that consult look like, and what type of people are you seeing?
So for my consults, more specifically telehealth, they're all pelvic health. I mean, occasionally I might get somebody who is a back or some other orthopedic type issue. Or because of my experience in peds, I might still get a pediatric patient, whether it's an early intervention or an older kid. For most of that, though, it doesn't look that much different than an in-person session. I mean, sure, I can't put my hands on them, but I go through the same basic process that we've all learned. First of all, it's that intake process. How are they getting to me? They've got to schedule somehow. They've got to, there's information that I've got to give them in terms of like the intake forms and stuff like that. And that really gives me a good bit of information anyway about this person that's coming to see me. So I already get to kind of set up in my mind, okay, here's what's going on. This is if I hadn't spoken to them already on the phone, because sometimes they'll just go on my website and schedule, automatically. So my first contact outside of the email is going to be at that session. And then when we get into the session, I'm just listening. I just usually say, hey, so tell me what's going on. Tell me why you're here to see me. Tell me why we're doing this. And they just start talking. And I just let them share their story and share what's going on. If they're rambling and ranting, I might rein them back in with a few questions, because we know sometimes our patients have a tendency to do that. But I think sometimes for them, they're just excited that anybody is listening. And I had that just yesterday. I had a guy schedule a session with me, and he sent me an email after the session and says, nobody has listened to me. I went to a physician, and all they did, they saw me for 2 minutes. They gave me medication, which I did not take. And I was no better leaving his office. And you sat down and you explained what's going on. You explain, what can be done, what the course of therapy and everything would be. And I feel so much more comfortable. I feel like I'm not panicked anymore, and so we have that ability to do that for people. Sometimes they might be coming to us even in lieu of seeing a doctor. So you really want to take the time to listen to them and utilize this session. I tell most people like a triage, just kind of figure out what's going on. Is it you that they need? Do they need to go see a specialist? Is it an emergency? Like what is that session? So take them through some movements, after they've told me what's going on. If it's an orthopedic issue, I'll take them through some movement. I want to look at their function. If they're telling me, it's a mom and she's like, yeah, I've got this pain in my shoulder, and every time, I do this, it hurts. Every time I lift a basket of laundry. Cool. You got any full laundry baskets right now? Let's go get them. Take the phone with you. Let's go lift some laundry. Let's see what you look like lifting the basket. Especially if they're in their home when they're doing this session, you get to see a little bit more than you normally would see in a clinic setting. So it's perfect. I love it because I can tell them, the same things they're complaining for in their home. Well, let's go do that. Let me see what that looks like. Let's see what your posture looks like. Let's see what your mechanics look like. Let's see how you're doing what you're doing. And then after that, I bring it back to, okay, here's based on what you've told me, based on what I've seen and the things I've asked you to do. Here's what, in my professional opinion, I think is going on. Give them a little bit of explanation about what that is, and then say, hey, here's what therapy would look like. Here's what these sessions would look like futuristically. Here's what we need to work on and what that progression would look like. But I always try to bring it back to whatever their goals are. So if that mom is telling me, yeah, my shoulder hurts, what is it that you like to do? Oh, well, I want to play tennis. My neighbors get together on Sunday and we play tennis, but now I've been sidelined. I can't play any tennis. Then my goal is to get you back to playing tennis. So for us in those sessions, it might look like having her get a tennis racket and having her, get into a ready stance and just going through the mechanics of a swing as part of her, once we've kind of alleviated that pain, but just to kind of get her back to doing what she wants to do and making it functional for her. So that's pretty much an overview of what I do with a lot of my clients.
I love that. And you raised such a good point. And I think Anthony said this the other day too, being able to see people in their environment with the equipment that they have, and you get to see the heights of things. Cause we try and replicate it as much as we can in clinic, but
yeah,
how good is it to be able to actually see them in their own environment with the equipment, getting an idea of the space as well, because sometimes it's an awkward space or something's really low and they have to bend at a funny angle, all that kind of stuff, which is really great. Juan, if it's okay, I'm just going to take a little step, Juan, I always try and like British
Juan.
your name.
Joanne
Juan.
Michelle. Joanne Michelle.
Juan Michelle. If we take a little step back to how people, I'm really interested to find out how people find you, because what I'm hearing from some of the people in the community, and I don't know whether you two are feeling this as well, but a lot of people are thinking that the community don't want telehealth. They don't think telehealth is valuable. People really want to see me in clinic or the hands-on stuff. So you've obviously got a setup where people actually have an expectation of seeing you online or find you deliberately to have an online consult. So I'd love to find out how people find you and what your sort of, I guess, marketing is around telehealth, because it's obviously been very successful for you. I think that might be really helpful.
Yeah, so a lot of people have found me on social media. I've had people find me on Instagram, and people just randomly message me on Instagram and said, hey, that post that you made, that's what's going on with me, but no one has been able to pinpoint that. And so I always tell people all the time, like, what people are actually looking at what you post. You might not think so, but there are people who are paying attention. You've got to speak to somebody, though. It can't be random. Like, you have to speak to somebody. So if you are, if in your, let's say for a lot of people now who are pretty much at home because their clinics are closed, when you are promoting your brick and mortar, you're promoting yourself as the back specialist, or you're promoting yourself as the pain specialist. That doesn't change. If you're the experts on all things back pain, then you still are the expert on all things back pain. People's back pain hasn't gone away just because Corona came. Like, they're still in pain. So speak to those people. Like, you don't stop speaking to the people that you want to work with. And for me, that's what's worked for me and how people have found me, because they would just find me online. I mean, as a pelvic therapist, I am on a few of the directories for like the continuing ed that I've done. So I've also had people find me that way. But the vast majority of people who have found me online that I've had no established relationship have found me through my social media. The other thing is, as you talk to people, when people contact you, people may be local, they contact you because they're looking for physical therapy. If what you're hearing in that initial conversation is something that is not very complex, I would say encourage that patient to take a telehealth session. And one of the easy ways to do that is, instead of jumping on a phone call, make it a video call. Say, hey, when I want to get to know, when a client is reaching out to me, I want to get to know them a little bit better because I want to make sure that this is a good fit. Get them on a video call, so that they're already familiar. And when you talk to them and they're saying, hey, this is my problem, can you help me? What are your clinic hours? That type of stuff. You can say, what, actually, I do a lot of my sessions in this format as well. Is that something that you would be interested in? Because our hands don't cure people in and of themselves, don't cure people or heal people. Our knowledge and the ability to process the information that we're getting and the ability to relay that to people is what helps them ultimately. We merely guide them. Yes, we do a lot of hands-on work in a lot of instances, but how much of that can we teach them to do themselves? Because especially if you're in a clinic, they're not seeing you 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. So there's going to be a big, portion of the week that they're not with you. What can you do to help them be more independent in what they're doing? And so usually when I talk to, clinic owners and stuff like that, who were looking at, even before this, kind of transitioning to that type of model, I would talk to a lot of them about, starting with a hybrid approach. When you see people in your clinic and you've evaluated them, especially for now, mind you, not everybody is going to be well suited for telehealth. So let me say that. And there are going to be some people who might need that hands-on care. That being said, there are a lot of them that we know will do well in this format. So why not set the expectation and let people know? People are going to do pretty much what you train them to do. You got to train your clients well.
Yeah, and isn't it interesting? Like, I wonder how, I know that I've done it. you know, we've trained them to come to us because
Mm-hmm.
that's where we are.
Mm-hmm.
And now people are kind of a little bit lost, and it's, yeah, but people need to come and see me. I know I should
Mm-hmm.
close, but people need to come and see me because, like, they've got back pain. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
do they really need to come and see you? Or is that your preference because you're, so there's a lot of this anxiety around that. One of the things that we're going through in Australia is that different practices, and everybody's situation is different, both from a financial side and from just their population. They might be a remote town where they're doing more than just physical therapy, like they're doing
Mm-hmm.
community services. But it seems like a lot of people are either embracing the change or they're resisting the change, and it's been really,
Mm-hmm.
really hard. And arguing on the internet doesn't carry this kind of face-to-face communication,
Mm-hmm.
or even just the voice and hearing the way that I ask the questions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, with respect to training people to expect that, the messaging, I'm hearing from you, and because I heard from you, that so much of what is done happens before, like all the work is done before, you know, setting up that appointment. You spoke about forms, you spoke about messaging, um, getting on a call with them, you spoke about training people on what to expect. Um, can you speak to a little bit of some of all that prep work and the legal work that you had to do, that you had to think about, that made you more confident to step into this space?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I usually will tell most people, and a lot of people that I've been talking to over the past, few days have been like, so I just got laid off. I'm about to start telehealth. And I'm like, all right, wait a minute. That's great. Technically you could, but here's the thing. If you go see Joe Schmo on a virtual session and something happens and Joe Schmo is a litigious guy, you're going to get sued. You have no protection between you and your so-called business. So I always will recommend clinicians, at least here in the States. I mean, I'm sure that you guys might have the same setup in Australia, but make sure that you're a legal entity, so that separates your business from your personal. You always want to protect your family, and I always kind of have mommy brain on, because like I always have to think about the family in everything that I do. So you want to make sure that you're a legal entity. You want to make sure that you have forms in place, your consent forms, that they're consenting to the treatment, that they're aware that this session is going to be in a video format, that they are aware of whatever your policies are, if you've got a cancellation policy, if you've got a no-show policy in place, that they're aware and okay with whatever form of communication, text, call, whatever the case may be, similar to what you would have in your clinic. You want to make sure that you've got those things. It's not just, hey, let's jump on a video. You really want to make sure that if you're going to do this, you do it right. Um, and then in addition to that, you want to make sure that you've got that liability insurance and protection, your professional insurance. You want to make sure that you've got that covering. So here we get professional and general liability insurance, and you want to make sure that you have those coverings. A lot of the insurance companies will have verbiage with regards to telehealth. A few of them, the one that is usually recommended by the APTA, HPSO, CMNF, there are a few others out there, but they will say, either as long as you're practicing according to your state's Practice Act, you're covered for telehealth, because we don't see it as any different type of treatment. It's just more or less a different location, kind of like how a home visit is different from an office visit. It's just a different mode of delivery. And then, some of them might have very specific, yes, we color telehealth, virtual sessions, phone sessions, or whatever have you. So you want to make sure that you've got those things in place and have that umbrella of protection around you.
I was going to say, and here in Australia, those of us that have APA insurance are covered under telehealth, as long as we stick within our scope of practice.
Mm-hmm.
From the legal side of things, Joanne Michelle, I understand in America you can only treat people within your state unless there's a couple of fuzzy law. It's very complicated. It's also very complicated in America, but yeah, you can't, if you're in Alabama, you can't treat someone in New York State or something, right?
Yeah. So if you can treat people as long as you're licensed in that state. You can do wellness anywhere. So then there's that, that division. What is wellness and what is treatment? And more or less a treatment kind of goes along the line of, there is a functional deficit and we are addressing a specific functional deficit. Like there's something to treat versus wellness is more, general sense of well-being. We're trying to just get this person stronger. Maybe it's an athlete that's coming to me for performance, something like that. So that's kind of the fuzziness there. Usually to err on the side of caution, you just say stick to your state. In any case, when you look at the size of most states and you look at, I tell people all the time, because most people say, well, that's kind of small. Like I can't, and I'm like, your state's got millions of people in it. If you were in a brick and mortar clinic, you're going to have access to people presumably within a 60-minute radius. Now you've got access to an entire state. So it's a huge difference. You've got access to a lot of people. So you don't have to worry that there's going to be some shortage all of a sudden. But so that's the difference. And those are like the particulars with regards to the treatment here. So as long as you're licensed in the state that the patient is in. So if I'm here in Georgia and you were in New York, I'm licensed in New York also, I can see you. If you were in Michigan, I couldn't for treatment. So I would have to then refer you on. What I personally do though, is I always charge for my time for those initial consults. So I don't, I tell people, I don't know what they're coming to me for. And I use that initial session as a triage. So am I giving skilled individual care? No, I'm using that session to hear what's going on with them, to see what their issues are, to see if there are any red flags. And if there's someone that needs to be treated for a specific issue, then I say, hey, you're in Michigan. I know a great therapist that I can refer you to, and take it as an opportunity to lift someone else up and kind of just send that patient their way. So I think it's an opportunity for us as therapists to kind of build each other up in this time, and really kind of, work on our community, because there's people that are going to contact you from all over the place. And if you can't see them, there's probably someone else that can, that you can recommend. Then you just kind of say, hey, here's who I would recommend you go to. Would you like me to make a call and see if I can get you an appointment in? They appreciate that. So, you try to get them in and then let the other person take it from there.
Right. So there was a lot of good information there. So what I got from it was be a legal entity. So in Australia, that just means be a company or a trust or something like that. But basically, protecting your personal assets. Mm-hmm. Is this what I'm getting from you, Joanne? Mm-hmm. Joanne Michelle? And then, well, I want to do the right thing, because my name is Anthony and I get Anthony all the time. And I know what it does. It's like a little pinprick in your head every time.
But it could be like Jay. I should have worn a name tag. Jay.
Jay. Well, and I know that you don't mind people calling you Jay.
I know. I love you. You can do no wrong.
I'm pretty sure I can, but thank you. So being a legal entity so that you can protect your personal assets, because Joe Schmo might be the litigious type. The consent forms, the intake forms, and that'll be things like contact details of other people in case something happens while you're on the call and they don't have mm-hmm. anybody around. These are the sorts of things that we do on the in-person clinic side of things, so that we can contact people if an event happens. Mm-hmm. We do that also for the in-person contact, the online contact as well. All right, cool. And then, the same sort of policies and procedures, liability insurance, and restricting yourself to just your state in America, or just your province in Canada, or just Australia in Australia is, because, we get to see everybody in Australia, mm-hmm. Is actually not that limiting, right? There's millions and millions of people. So I thought that was a fantastic message. Um, what are some, I know that you've spoken to some of this already, but what are some of those tips of getting PTs over the line, believing that they can do this, as well as getting their clients who, for good reasons, have taught them that in person is so awesome, and have never considered doing online? What are some of those tips or more tips that you have on helping people cross that line and go, okay, you know what? Yes.
So I would say, for one, if you've got clients that have been really resistant going into this week, see if they would agree to like a 15-minute video session. One of the things that I actually have used video sessions for and continue to use them for is post-discharge follow-up. So what I do is, after I have discharged a client from my care, I try to do a follow-up in about 3 or 6 months, and sometimes, depending on, because a lot of my clients I've become pretty close with.
Sorry. We have sorry, Anthony was unmuted and I was sending him we've got a little chat box. I'm like, mute yourself, mute Anthony, and he's just seen it. Sorry, Joanne Michelle.
Oh, you're fine. And so, but I would say, if you really kind of just want to get people accustomed to it, then make sure that you're offering it, or make more offers, encourage them. It might take, it's no different than when people talk about sales and marketing. Is everybody going to want in on your offer on the first go? Not necessarily all the time. How many people come to you, but they've been dealing with pain for like 3, 4, 5 years, but they've been told you need to go to therapy, you need to go to therapy, you need to go to therapy, and they haven't come. Did it work the first time? Clearly not. Did it work the second time they were told? Probably not. But they keep hearing it, and you keep encouraging them, and you keep offering those opportunities. So whether it's to say, hey, I know you're a little skeptical, but how about we just do a check-in via video? And they say, okay, cool, that's fine. And you check in with them, say, how's your pain? I know I haven't seen you since you were in the clinic. How is your pain? How are you doing? Are you having any concerns? Do you have any questions for me? Those types of things. A lot of the times they'll realize, oh, we can do a lot of the same thing in this format. So you just want to get them to realize, oh, it's not that different, right? Because for a lot of them, they think it is because, they just don't know what we do. You're a PT, you stretch me. You're a PT, you give me exercises. You're a PT, but no, I'm a PT. I'm assessing you. I am guiding you. I am doing all these other things. I'm just not stretching you. But we've got to kind of change their way of thinking so that they can see that this is a viable option. I think it's great. One of the other things that I tell people is offer times that aren't the typical clinic hours. Like, how cool would it be if you could, like, if you're up early on a Saturday, like, to see somebody at 6 or 7 in the morning, if you're already up anyway, and I've done that on Saturdays because people were working during the week. And I say, hey, I've got openings between 5 and 8 because my kids wake up at 8:30. So I'm good 5 to 8 and they schedule and they're like, okay, they're like, oh man, this is great. It's early in the morning and I can do this. And, I don't have to worry about taking time off work. I don't have to worry about, maybe it's a time when the kids are asleep, so they don't have to worry about people running through the house like crazy, right? Those types of things.
Traffic.
So,
There's no traffic.
No traffic, nothing. So it's, start to think about the problems and the reasons that your patient would have for saying no. Now, how can you offer a solution for this problem? Like, even in terms of, like, if it were during the week, you can say, listen, I know you've been worried about having to take time off to come to the clinic and, these types of things, but how about we try a video session? Would you be open to that? Maybe we can change the time so it's a time that you're not at work, so you don't have to take time off. We can do it at a time that's feasible for you, maybe later in the evening. So now you don't have to worry about traveling and sitting in the car in traffic. Now you don't have to worry about taking PTO, right? So you've now helped this patient in more than one way, and you're going to help with whatever their problem is.
Yeah, that's such a good point. So a couple of things I'm just going to come back to, Joanne Michelle. One was that made me really think about how I practice is that a lot of the clients that I see, because I do a lot of pre and postnatal work, as you know, but a lot of my the clients that I see, I'll get them to come in and I'll check on how they are progressing with their rehabilitation program, and then I'll give them sort of the next step in the program, and then I'll send them a link with their exercises, and I'll get them to come back in another 4 to 6 weeks. So that's kind of a lot of the work that I do. And now that I think about it, I'm thinking, yeah, I could do a lot of what I do on telehealth because I don't do a lot of manual therapy anyway. So for those clients, it's just interesting. It's making me think that I could start to even transition, once our clinics are back and running, some of those clients to doing both, like maybe every second session do via telehealth. So it's just an interesting thought with that one. The other thing that you said was, oh no, my brain has just stopped. What was I going to say? I've forgotten. I had 2 points. I forgot 50% of them. Anthony.
You haven't drank enough coffee yet. It's too early.
It's true. I'm only half a cup down.
Yeah. I think there's so many benefits to telehealth that you just outlined, and really,
She remembered.
We better get her before she forgets.
I remembered. You were just talking about all the things that we do as physical therapists, and just one of the other advantages I think for telehealth is people who do have acute pain, who do think I must go in and see somebody, but that opportunity to triage, to check for red flags, to give them advice, because we see those people come over, they get in the car in agonizing pain, drive half an hour to a clinic, fold themselves out of the car, we give them some treatment, they feel better, then they get back in the car and then they got to drive all the way home. And I think how much value is it to be able to see someone in their home and say, right, and do that assessment, do that screen, give them some reassurance, and check in with them a day or two later, because we know that 85% of them are going to get better within 6 weeks, but just still having that one-to-one contact, still having that reassurance, giving him all our physio guidance as well, but checking those red flags and saying, hey, look, if these things happen, this is when we start to get worried, but you're doing great. This is very likely to get better. Here are some tips on how you can look after yourself. I think there's great value in that without having to get in a car and have all the pain associated.
I mean, but when you think about it though, how many times are people having acute issues, but it's happening at like 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the evening and the doctor's office is closed? So now they've got to wait a whole nother day, but they could easily jump on a telehealth session with you, and you could, if nothing else, alleviate their fear, which is going to feed into that pain cycle, to just make sure that it's like, okay, here's what I want you to do. You're okay. Nothing to be alarmed about. I know it hurts. Try these things, do this. And what I'm going to do is give you a buzz in the morning. We'll see how you're doing. And if necessary, then we can always go ahead and I'll try to make a call into the physician for you. Let's see if we can't get you in sooner rather than later. But that takes a whole bunch of fear out of the patient, and like, we have to realize that we are in a prime position as physios because we see the people more than the doctors do anyway. Like, we're the ones they tell half of the stuff to anyway, so we're in a prime position to be able to just even offer more value to patients.
Yeah. I spent an hour and a half with a friend yesterday who normally I just see. And I had to explain to her what I do in an in-person consult with her, and we had a big talk, and she sent me a message like literally just before we got on this call saying how much better she felt today. And like, I'm sitting here, it's so helpful. And I think, we can see a lot of what we're doing as loss. And I was chatting to Julie Granger about it on her thing, on her business coaching thing. And we were talking about loss and having and doing, and we talked about that on our podcast too. We choose to have things, we choose to do things, and I feel like this lockdown is an opportunity for us to actually really work out what what is our identity? What are the things that we've bolted on to our identity? And maybe they shouldn't be a part of it because, the example that Julie used was that, if I was in locked in syndrome, I had a stroke, I had some sort of event happen, I was just lying there in a bed, I'm still worthy of love and care and attention and kindness. And so all of the things that I have and all of the things that I do don't actually change my identity. But we've bolted on all these things. And so every time they're attacked, it feels very personal. It feels very offensive. And some people just aren't ready for this change. It's such an opportunity to reframe what we do. And like what Marika was saying, being able to see, hey, yeah, actually a lot of my catch-ups are I probably could do, and we really should have a telehealth option for them. And we can just, we see the in-person patient out and we literally jump on the call and catch up. And then that's another consult. And then we say goodbye and then we go pick up our next patient in person if that's a transition that we have to make. I think it's a great opportunity for us. And like you said, we're going to be able to reach so many more people. Like, how many times have I had people say, you're 2 hours away. It's a long time to get to you. How many times, like Marika was saying, they struggled to get in, and you check on them with an SMS the next day, and they're like, yeah, by the time I got home, it was a 20-minute drive and my back pain was back again. Like, do you know what I mean? And
I
yet,
mean, even think about inclement weather. You think about like the northern US and the snowstorms and all that stuff and the cancellations that clinics go through in the winter. Like, just because there's a snowstorm, I mean, unless they have lost internet, and even then, jump on a phone call with them. You can still jump on a call with them.
yeah, that is just completely foreign to us, Joanne, Michelle. Like, we don't
I
even
mean,
know
well,
what you're
based
talking
on
about.
your background,
This is a sunny day. I wish I could
There's
turn my
a
computer
fire,
around.
Anthony. The roads are closed because of a massive fire. It's like that.
Yes. Okay. Yes. The roads are closed because of fire. That
Okay,
would
thank
be one of our ones. Fire is a big one. Flooding is another one. But yes, I agree.
all the natural disasters.
We've got all the natural disasters, just
You've
not
got
the
the natural
snowstorms.
disasters and the most deadliest insects. Yeah.
I know. And isn't it
Spiders
great?
and snakes. Ugh.
Isn't it great that
No
all the
one's
North
died.
American kids tell their parents about how dangerous Australia is? I always love
I
that.
actually, I remember one of my first jobs in London, and I was working as a physio assistant. He just turned to me and he said, I don't know how you can live in Australia. I said, what? He said, it's so dangerous. Everything there it was deadly serious.
Everything can kill you.
How do you live there? And I was like, no one's died of a redback spider bite in like 30 years or something, dude. Like, yeah, occasionally there's snakes and there's shark attacks a couple of times a year.
What's
Yeah,
a shark?
it's good.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Stay out of the
Whatever.
water. Sunbathe.
Skin cancer
good.
probably kills more people than any natural animals
Forget
do.
that.
So
Don't sunbathe. Take your chances with a shark.
take your chance. Well, literally. Wear a wetsuit, look like a seal, and take your chances. Awesome.
You just took a strange turn.
Yeah. So this opportunity, was it, can you describe your journey into reframing what you're doing with people and how your beliefs have changed over, was it 5 years that you've been doing this or more?
Yeah, so I started about 5 years ago when I was still doing most of my caseload at that time was pediatric. I just had my daughter. I decided to just be an independent contractor. And so I was doing pediatric home care early intervention. But one of the things that I was coming up on was, sometimes I'd get to the home and grandma's there or the nanny's there. And if the parents are there, only one parent is there. And we all know that nobody ever does the exercises correctly anyway. So, then to just relay the exercises to another family member, my God, it's like, what is that game with phone when you have to pass the message and like the message at the end is totally not what it was at the beginning. So what I was finding was I would either see the kid for the next session and the parents like, yeah, we didn't do anything because we forgot how to do them. Meanwhile, they're like showing me the handout. We didn't know how to do it. You didn't? with the pictures and the explanation, okay. Or the grandparent or the nanny or whomever didn't do anything. Well, I forgot what you said after you left. So what I started doing was, I'm like, look, let's jump on a call the end of the week. Do you have like WhatsApp? Do you have Skype? And they're like, yeah, yeah. And I would jump on calls with them. I remember the first family I did it with, and the dad worked. Mom was a stay-at-home mom. Dad had no clue what was going on. And she was like, she wanted him to be able to kind of hear like what we were doing so he could, participate as well. And the feedback I got was amazing because they were like, this was so helpful. Like, this was amazing. This was so helpful. Thank you so much. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I mean, here's what we can do. How about we do this every week? So, I see you like this particular day. How about, a few days afterwards, we follow up just to kind of make sure you guys are okay. And it wasn't a long call. It might have been like, 10, 15 minutes on a video. I just tell them, send me a text when they were ready. At the end of the day, whenever dad got home, we jump on the video chat, and that was it. And then it kind of dawned on me, why don't you do this after your evals to follow up with them to make sure that they stay compliant? And I kept doing it a little bit more. When I decided to do my practice and focus mostly on women's health, that was an interesting challenge because I had to reframe my own thoughts on women's health, because we do internal assessments and we do this and we do that. And it's like, but can I help them though? Even if I can't do an internal assessment and even though I can't put my hands on them. And so it was a little bit of a struggle because I still wanted to at least see them in person. I'd get the moms who are pregnant that I'm like, yeah, I can see you online. That's fine. I'd go through exercises with them, or they were postpartum and I can go through stuff with them. And then I'd get the more complex patients and I'm like, oh no, I need to put my hands on you. But then after a while, I started thinking, what if this person was, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 hours away from me? Then what? Now I'm forced to try to figure out how I can best help them without me being able to put my hands on them. And that happened to me when I had an overactive bladder patient. She was 3 hours away and she contacted me, and, I was talking to her. She hadn't yet seen a urogynecologist. Her gynecologist that she goes to was an hour and a half away, and there were no specialists near her. So we talked through her issues. We talked through some things that she could be doing. We started looking at bladder diary. We went over that. We went over, toileting habits and different things like that. And we went through a lot of that information. I was like, but this is helpful information. Like, she's still going to get value out of this. And, I would argue that in most cases, something is better than nothing, especially when we consider we're already like few as far as pelvic physios are concerned. There's not a lot of us. There are more these days, but there's still not a lot of us. And a lot of people, in remote areas, they still have problems, but they can't get to us. So how do we help them, when they are 3, 4+ hours away from, a pelvic physio, somebody that actually knows how to address these things. So I had to start kind of reworking my own train of thought around that and realizing that there is a lot of value that I can still bring to my patients, even without me being able to put my hands on them.
Yeah. It's oh, sorry. We got the crosstalk. I was just going to say that it was fantastic. Because what I heard was you just did it, and you started small, and you started with follow-ups, and situations made you go into that. And I know how much I don't know about pelvic health, and I don't talk to people about the nutrition and their toileting, like, apart from the superficial, simple level stuff. I call them the website level stuff. Um, you know, Nutrition and toileting habits. And did you know that there are ways that you can support your perineum that's going to help this? Oh, you didn't know? Okay, well, make sure you talk to the pelvic PT about that. Um, Self-care, stitch wound healing, postnatal care, antenatal care. bladder diaries. Like there's so many things. And then, I love the exercise and movement piece and working and changing symptoms and, having being guided by the person who's on the call. All of that is so much fun. And like you said, there are definitely cases that need to be seen in person. It's very difficult to do an internal assessment without somebody there. But there's so many things that, I helped a male pelvic patient not that long ago because the pelvic PT organized the appointment and was there, and he paid me for the consult, and she was the camera person, and the feedback from her was, oh, that was great. I never thought of doing it this way to get
Mm-hmm.
that. I do get them to do pelvic floor relaxation, but the way that you got them to do it with exercise, and I could feel, because I had her feel the things that she was looking for,
Mm-hmm.
and she's like, oh yeah, no, that's a lot better, and he's like, yeah, I feel a lot better. So even being able to do that type of consultation online, where we refer to other people, be it a consultant, a specialist, whatever, or another PT. Isn't it great that we could also do that as a service and say, hey, if you want my different angle on it, you can join in the session too. And now we're able to turn up with them at their
Mm-hmm.
appointment. Um, so that sort
Oh
of
yeah.
thing has been fantastic. Have you had much of that sort of thing, with other PTs and
I've
collaborations?
actually, yeah, I've consulted for other PTs in clinics, and I think that's a great opportunity for clinics to. I mean, when we think about having a practice and stuff like that, one of the things we think about is overhead, right? So then a lot of people may say, I don't want to have to hire a pelvic floor therapist if that's not majority of my caseload. But how cool would it be if you had access to a pelvic floor therapist that if you did have that patient, now you don't have to worry about a full-time hire, but you have access to one and they can do a telehealth consult for you. How cool would that be? How much value would that bring to your practice? And even as therapists, how cool will it be if, when the patient is going to their follow-up exams with the doctor, you're in there with them. Like, they're asking, like, they don't know the questions to ask sometimes, or you'll tell them what they should ask the doctor, but obviously they forget. So how cool would it be if you say, as soon as you get there, just put me on the video chat, and, that way we can communicate, and that way everybody is on the same page. I mean,
Well,
now the doctor knows, hey, this person is really vested in the care of my patient. It's good marketing for you because now they're like, oh, well, the patient really likes this therapist. This therapist knows what they're talking about. Yeah, sure, I'll send him more patients. We've got to think. I think a lot of the times when I've talked to other clinicians and other practice owners, what I've constantly heard is all the reasons why we can't, all the reasons why we shouldn't, all the reasons why it won't work. And I would challenge anybody to start changing their way of thinking. I know for a lot of people, they just want to patch for right now and they just want to get through this. And then when this is over, they're going to scurry back to their clinics and life will carry on as usual. But start to think about all the reasons why it could work and all the reasons why you should do it and all the reasons why it will benefit your patients, because all it's going to do is benefit your patients.
I'd be really interested to hear from our community on this in the months to come, whether people do have telehealth consults with their clients while attending their medical practitioners. I'd be really interested to see what the response of the medical community to that is, because that's a really interesting idea, which I had never really crossed my mind before.
I feel like it's good because it would change the way that the medical community perceives us too, because I think for a lot of people, they would argue, they think that we're technicians, but we're not. And a lot of them don't see us as not even nearly being on par with them. And I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, I am not an orthopedic surgeon, or will I ever profess to be an orthopedic surgeon. But guess what? The orthopedic surgeon isn't rehabbing this patient and doesn't know what to look for and doesn't know how to progress this patient back to their sport. But I do. And I feel like it could be the beginning of some beautiful relationships whereby we start to, because again, at the end of the day, it's only going to be more beneficial for the patient. So
100%. Because, you know, we write these letters and sometimes they get lost in the post, or we send them to the patient to say, can you take this in when you go see your doctor, and ask them to read it, please ask them to read it. There's some important stuff in there. And that can at times be very challenging. So I think that's a wonderful idea. And it'd just be interesting to see what the perception from the doctors is like with that, and whether there's any privacy issues, which I don't imagine would be, because it's the patient and they've got their device.
And they're
totally
there.
As a related... Huh?
And they're there. It's
and
like,
they're there.
And they're there. You know, it's like you turned up with a
right.
The other thing I just wanted to mention, because we talked about the access to pelvic health physios. It's really funny because I'm in this little bubble in Perth, Western Australia, where we have so many good pelvic health PTs. Because at the university here, we have a master's program. And so honestly, there's a bunch, and they're lovely, lovely people. So our clients we have really easy access in Perth. Now, having said that, elsewhere in the state, it's much harder. In other places in the country, in rural areas, it's challenging. But on the whole, it doesn't seem to be too bad in Australia. But, you know, through my work with Girls Gone Strong, I do a lot of chatting to fitness professionals and physical therapists in America, and I will hear these stories of clients saying, because my default is go and see a pelvic health PT, go and see a pelvic health PT. And they're like, yeah, that's great, Marika, but I've looked and there's no one within a 6-hour drive of me. So what am I supposed to do? And so then I kind of go, oh, I forget that it's like that in a lot of places. And I will often end up reaching out to the women's health physiotherapy groups and say, hey, is anyone near this person? Is anyone around? And this happens all the time. This is not an infrequent occurrence. So I love what you're saying about how the fact that, you know, this is just, it's opportunity. It's looking at it as an opportunity and getting onto some of those directories and things. You know, people need to be able to find you. So whether that's you marketing yourself within your social media groups, but getting on some of these directories, finding it easy, making it easy for clients to find you. Letting people know that you're there to help them anywhere in the state, you know, within that 6-hour drive. But I think it's just making people aware that you have a service that is valuable. You have a service that people need. There are literally people in their homes thinking, you know, I've got this lump, this sensation in my vagina. I'm feeling really uncomfortable. I can't leave my home. I don't know who to talk to, or someone else who's like just had a baby and things don't feel right. That ability, you know, even though, as you said, like we really want to use our hands and our eyes in person, there's so much value in doing things in person, but there is a lot that we can do outside of that. But just, I think what I would say to pelvic health PTs around the globe right now is just not to undervalue the knowledge that you have and the skill set that you have, and please get out there and start telling people what you can do, and let them know how you can help, because you can help.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. I feel like there was an explosion. The mic drop. With that, you know, just being that, because I've had people, do you know a pelvic PT who's looking for work? And it's like, no, they all own their own clinics. But being the consultant for that clinic, and, you know, I don't know how it's going to work. You pay rent or whatever, or, you know, whatever. It doesn't matter. You can figure something out so that it's a beneficial relationship for everybody, and you now have access. And it's not just pelvic PTs. It could be, you know, a running coach. It could be a cycling coach. It could be a track and field coach.
Could be a neuro. I mean, we could take pelvic PT out and say, you know, a neuro specialist, or a pediatric specialist.
Pediatrics, right?
But now I mean, how cool would it be, for instance, at a pediatrician's office, if a parent is having a problem, that they have an on-call peds PT?
Yeah.
That they can just jump on a video chat with and say, hey, you know, we've got this kiddo here, you know, any thoughts or whatever have you, that the parent knows that this person, these people are vested in the care of their kid. Crazy.
Yeah, I love it. And I love the way that, And it's not even a spin. You know, I hate it when people say, "Oh, you're putting a positive spin on things." It's like, no, I'm not spinning it. I'm actually looking the opposite direction to where you're looking, right? I'm looking at it differently to what you are. And I love how you've taken that challenge. How can we do this better? How can we do this differently? How can we take advantage of the opportunities instead of trying to hold on to what we're losing, which is our identity as being, you have to come see the guru. Instead, how do I help people understand that I facilitate and enable people and empower people to achieve their goals,
Hmm.
which totally is on brand for our podcast. And that's why we love you, Joanne Michelle.
I love you guys.
Um, Look, if you're listening live on the podcast, if there's anything else that you wanted to add, now is the time. Any questions that you have, even if you're listening on a replay, let us know. We're winding up, so we'll take some final questions. Um, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about, Joanne Michelle? It's been so good listening to you know, part of your journey and how you had to learn and you know, really by circumstance, you and looking for a different solution, you've moved into this area and you moved in with confidence, and every success you had gave you more and more confidence. Um, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, you can't be afraid to try. You know, you can't be afraid to try and fail. You can't think that you're going to know everything, you know, just in one session. You know, there's going to be a learning curve for everybody. And I think for a lot of people, they're like, I've not done this before, so therefore I can't do it. No, you might suck at it the first time. So what? You know, I would argue when you came out of PT school, you didn't know anything and you probably felt like you were going to wet your pants the first day. But you got over that and you saw more people and you got better. It's just like that. You'll see more people and you'll get better. But you know, it's one of those things that you just can't be afraid. At the end of the day, it's not about you. It's about the people that you're serving. So do what you can to serve them.
I feel so inspired, Juan Michelle. I have all these ideas now popping around my head. Thank you so much for coming with all your energy, your wonderful energy, and
Oh,
your
thank you.
enthusiasm and your knowledge. It's been really fantastic talking to you, and I've Facebook stalked you for a while and seen some of the articles that you've written for Girls Gone Strong as well. And obviously you're a fantastic person within the pelvic health and for the community, a little beacon shining up there. So thank you so much for all that you do. We really appreciate it.
I'm humbled and honored. It's an honor when the people that you look up to, you know, you get to kind of hang out with. It's like, oh man, I get to be on a podcast with Anthony Lowe and Marika. Oh my God.
Oh, I think you only look up to me because I'm taller than you.
I mean, there is that, but still, I'm pretty close though. I'm 6 feet tall now.
Yeah, I'm 6'2". Marika's not that tall. But in 4-inch heels, put on the 4-inch heels, 6-inch heels, and yeah, I'll be looking up to you. No, I appreciate that. We appreciate that, Joanne Michelle. So how can people find you? What are your socials? Tell us
Yeah,
anything
so on
that you would like to about you.
On Facebook, you can find me at JMM Health Solutions, on Instagram at The Pelvic Perspective, and my website is www.jmmhealthsolutions.com, and that's being updated right now to have all the telehealth content. So I have a Zero to Telehealth program for clinicians to just kind of give them the framework to get from not being able to do anything telehealth, from that fear-driven, you know, perspective of telehealth, to being able to, you know, get full-fledged into telehealth, whether they want to do it exclusively or just as an adjunct to their practice. In addition to that, there are a couple master classes that I have on there for people who are just kind of wanting just a little bit of information, just to kind of to whet their palate. And I also have a program called the Telehealth Taster. That's a compilation of all the top questions that were asked by all the practice owners and all the clinicians that I've worked with over the last year and a half, because a lot of them were asking a lot of the same questions. And I figured, well, if they're going to ask me this, then, everybody else I encounter might be asking me the same thing. So I went ahead and I compiled all those questions, and, it's a series of videos that they can go through to pretty much get all those questions answered.
That sounds awesome. And we will, if you send us all those links, we will put them in the show notes, because I think there's a lot of stuff out there at the moment, but sometimes with the programs, they can be almost too much information and too people want to kind of get started. I like that zero. Would you call it zero to telehealth?
Zero to telehealth.
Yeah, I like that idea, because I think people are a little bit overwhelmed at the moment, and sometimes they just need to kind of get started. And I'd say also what's been really lovely, and I'll give a shout out to some of my colleagues in Perth at Body Logic, because they're transitioning to telehealth at the moment. And, I'm hearing fantastic stories. So one of my colleagues just did six telehealth. She just got her receptionist to change everything to telehealth yesterday. And she worked from home with her 2 small children, and she did 6 telehealth consults in a row. And she said it was fine. It was fine. It went really well. And so I think that was really inspiring for everyone else as well, because we were all starting to see that this can be done, and that we can take that little sidestep. Everyone's nervous about the technology and it all kind of crashing or failing or not knowing what to do and feeling like an idiot. But actually it's relatively simple once you get started, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep. And God forbid the video platform should crash. If you've got good intake forms, then you can just jump on the phone or refresh the screen. Life happens, and when it does, what do you do?
Yeah. You just got to pivot. You got to keep adapting. If you've only got one way to do things, you're going to find it difficult to change.
Hashtag do something different.
Hashtag do something different. You know how it works.
He's trained me so well.
It was so much fun in New York. That seminar was so much fun.
That was awesome.
Hopefully, come September, we catch up in person again. And, it's that'll be in Long Island City, so it'll be fun. It's in the same gym, so looking forward to catching up in person. Otherwise, online at the Pelvic Perspective. Really loved spending time with you today, Joanne Michelle, and look forward to catching up with you again. So much wisdom, and because people sit there and go, why didn't I think of that? Such a simple thing, and fantastic. I feel like my brain exploded when you said you could be the remote consult person, and it's like, oh, so many people have asked me if they know a pelvic PT that they could hire. I've even had one guy say, we will put them through the pelvic health training just so that we can have somebody. But this is a great initiative. And I reckon that's the piece of gold that I'm taking away today. So really appreciated that. We've been summarizing as we've gone along. Normally I do a big summary, but I think the summary is just do it. A lot of people are saying, okay, I'm going to do it, but how do I get people to do that? Jump on a video call, make small steps, keep your messaging consistent. I heard a lot of, challenging your own beliefs as well, which is great. And so much of what we do can be done online. It does not make us less worthy of the brain that we have, because we are not merely technicians, as you said, but we have a diagnostic brain and we can still apply that. And in fact, this whole COVID situation can actually evolve us into a better model of healthcare that serves the people who see us so much more. So I'm looking forward to the future and the opportunities that are there, and I'm so glad to have people like you and Marika on that journey with us.
Yeah. Appreciate that.
Look, thank you very much. I'm going to stop recording. And for all of you who are listening, please drop a like, please drop a share, review the podcast, leave a comment, leave a question, and we'll definitely make sure that Joanne Michelle gets that. Or if you have any questions for us or any topics that you want to hear, please let us know. But otherwise, here comes the usual outro. Thank you. Well, that's it for this episode. Be sure to hit like if you enjoyed the episode and leave any comments or questions below. We'd really like to hear from you.
If you haven't already hit subscribe, please do so now so that you can be kept notified when we release our next episode.
Otherwise, thank you for listening, and we look forward to having you back with us for another episode of the Women's Health Podcast.